Hello everybody, quick review of the summer. I'm here in Ceres at Villa House, and as promised in the last video, I'm going to be doing a quick review, some of my thoughts about a movie that came out in the spring. I saw it then at the Dollar House over the summer, and that would be Mad Max Fury Road. There'll probably be a lot of spoilers in this. If you haven't seen the movie yet, you should watch it. It's out on DVD now. Before you watch this video, because I'm going to assume that you've seen it if you're watching this. Most people probably have, since we're far enough out from it, which is great because I wanted to actually discuss certain things about the movie rather than just give a review and kind of an overthought of it. So if you haven't seen it yet, my quick recommendation is that you, obviously it's rated R, so I mean you've got harsh content in it, but if that's fine with you, it was one of the best movies that I have seen in a while, and definitely the best movie that I've seen this year. So highly recommend. But now I want to actually talk about some things because there was a little bit, controversy isn't the right word, but there's debate and discussion about this movie. So let me start with a brief preface. I love the Mad Max series, all the preceding forms it's been in. I've really enjoyed. It's a genre that I like anyway, and it's definitely a defining piece of that genre. So when I saw the preview for this movie coming out, I was excited like, yeah, they're bringing out a Mad Max movie. I was actually really, really excited about it. But I also had in my mind, I was like, yeah, but how good is it going to be? I mean, we've seen lots of franchises that have recently tried to phoenix down themselves out of the ashes recently and don't always turn out well. Or, they just, in the reboots that they're attempting, they're going directions I don't particularly care for. Even ones which aren't necessarily horrible. I don't like, for example, JJ's Star Trek movies. I'm not going to say they're horrible movies, and people like them and everything. It just wasn't going a direction I would have liked to go, which I don't make movies, and people don't make movies just for me, so that's fine. But I figured the same thing might happen here. I started to get a little more hopeful, though, when I had heard, and you didn't even know this for a while, because just the trailer didn't necessarily have that in that, but that it wasn't actually going to be a reboot of the series. It was actually going to just be the next chapter in the series. Well, that was actually really exciting. I was like, that's something I want to see more of. I don't care that Mel Gibson's not going to play Mad Max, though, as I understand, in the original draft of the script, which is why there's a few lines that don't seem to chronologically make some sense in it, it was going to be Mel Gibson. Max was just going to be freaking ridiculously old in it. I'm glad that didn't happen because I think Tom Hardy did a great job. Though he needs to really be in a role where he's not really but putting that aside, I thought it was, great casting choices and a great direction for the series, and I would actually like to see more of that. I've always been more that way. You know, all these people talking about, oh man, we need another season of Firefly. We need to resurrect Firefly. I'm not that guy. I'm like, hey, I would love to see another movie or another show, more media within the Firefly universe, but I don't want to see an ancient cast come back together to cobble together something that only fans are going to see. So how much effort are you really going to put into it, because they're going to buy it anyway. Setting that aside, I like continuations, that spin-offs, things that just go forward. I don't mind swapping out casts. It's worked fine for Bond. It worked fine for other people. And so that's what this did, of course. And so when I heard that it was going to be that, and James actually was the one who confirmed that for me way back in the day. You probably don't even remember this. But I was really excited in that note. I was like, oh, that's good. That means this might go the way I want it to go. But, I'm still thinking, how much effort is really going to put into this? You got to figure people who like Mad Max are going to go. People who don't like Mad Max aren't going to go. We know we're getting our money. How much effort are we really going to throw into it? Well, they threw a lot into it, and the movie is excellent because of that. I asked one of my friends, because I wasn't sure. I was like, hey, can this come up for an Oscar this year? Like, is it even possible for it to win one? I don't know when the cutoff date on that is. If it counted as the last year. he was like, no, it would be for this year. I mean, obviously the timing works against it. It was very early in the year. Genre works against it and everything. But I mean, really, if it doesn't mop up some Oscars, in my mind, it shows what a joke the awards actually are. Because I'm sure there's people out there. I'm going to sound like I'm gushing. I did love the movie. It's probably the best movie that I've seen in theater since A Fellowship of the Ring. Like where I walked out of the movie, I was like, wow, that was actually a good movie. I've seen other movies that I've liked in theater, obviously, but not one where I was just sitting there and realized this is actually a great movie from an objective standpoint. How it's filmed, how it's acted, how it's written. So there were obviously some other arguments. People felt like Max wasn't in it enough. That didn't bother me. Again, this movie was almost written for me. It was actually, I did read a statistic that actually showed and went through that Max actually spends less time on screen in the first Mad Max movie than he does in this most recent one. Which a lot of people are like, oh man, it was not even about Mad Max. That's true to the series. If he wasn't really he wasn't the main focus of any of them. And he never has been. And that's an important thing to remember about that series. And that's one of the things that draws you to it, is you get a world and you're following one character through it, but he's not even really the focus. Even though he's indeed part of the focus and the struggle of, the guilt with his wife and child and all that. But that part itself didn't bother me. I actually thought the movie was stronger by having it play out that way. Of course, the editing, I mean, it is one of the best edited movies I think I've ever seen. Just no wasted shot. There was so much. Go back, watch that movie now that it's on DVD, if you saw it in theater. Or maybe if you haven't seen it and you're watching this anyway, when you watch it on DVD, pay attention to how much stuff is going on in every scene of that movie. How much stuff. And you're never lost. Not once. So many action movies now, even ones that are good and, nice budgets, you get the Michael Bay syndrome of, we want it to look awesome. Well, let's just do it that's close and do it like that. And people will assume awesome stuff is going on. Yeah, we generally do, but at the same time, it was great to see a movie that just so technically flowed that way and made that kind of stuff happen. Let's see, what were other things people complained about that I didn't? Okay. Some people were like, man, you get all this stuff, so much is not explained in this movie. Guess what? That's Mad Max. This is the first movie where you even kind of had hinted what happened to the world, which I actually didn't like, and I'll circle back to that. But, Mad Max, the movie, the series, is not about answering all your questions about the world. It's about just kind of setting a place and letting you dig around and make your own theories about certain things and your own thoughts about what caused this, or why is the world like this? Why did this happen? Why do people act this way? Why do people act that way? Which is, I think, one of the strengths of the series. And this kept up with that. I didn't like to springboard off of that, where you kind of really had it confirmed, there's this nuclear holocaust or something in this movie. And I liked that it was always really ambiguous in the other movies. All of a sudden, the world's just a desert, and and people are driving around in gangs, and you have no idea what's going on. But the world is absurd, and it's supposed to be absurd. So how you got there almost doesn't even matter. So I liked that concept where you didn't necessarily have all the discussion of wars and history of war and all that. But again, minor quibble at most. The one thing, though, and I hadn't heard this theory until this movie, and this movie actually, I think, helps bolster this theory. And this is kind of what I wanted to spend some time talking about and get people to comment back and see what they think on this. So there's a theory out there, which I now espouse, that the first Mad Max movie, which if you've seen them all, you realize there's a drastic divergence in style after the first one. I mean, there's still all kind of this puzzle, but you still have society in the first one, and that basically after that, all the other movies happen inside Max's head. Like he He basically, his wife and his kid get killed by that biker gang. He goes out, he just bloody vengeance on all of them, and he loses it. And everything since then has just been inside his head. And it makes sense on so many levels, because take the title, Mad Max. Where does Max in the show? He's not actually mad. A little in this most recent one, but it's like what? It doesn't make sense. But until you think of it more meta, it's like, no, he's crazy. That's why you're seeing these movies. This is the world that he made for himself. It explains, the dramatic shift from a society, albeit a crumbling society, into just this complete and total wasteland. The characters who appear multiple times, the same actor, but different roles. The way that the same themes repeat throughout the series, and Mad Max's desire for companionship. You often see him in the movies, not as he just saving people, but here's a man who's supposed to be the epitome of the sole survivor, and he's trekking through the wasteland, but he wants to work, even if it's reluctantly, he always eventually ends up working for someone. Like, it's though his mind still needs that structure and he's trying to recreate society in the absence of it in his own mind. So I actually really like that theory. There's of course many more examples and things about why, how that works the way it does. And it explains why some parts of the world are just kind of fuzzy, because Max doesn't have an answer for that. So it's just left out in his psyche. Like, how does a world with absolutely no water even work? But that theory, you can go out there, you can read more about it, and I won't bore you all with my interpretations of it. Just other to say that I really think it's interesting and I really kind of like it. So that's it. I really enjoyed the movie. Oh, I guess I should talk about... So, what's her name? The video game chick. She doesn't actually play video games. The critique, the feminist woman, who is not in agreement with me on many things. She actually spoke out and said, apparently, from what I've read, that a lot of people have said, man, this movie had so many strong female characters, which it does, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She came out and said, no, don't confuse that. It's still a movie which extols male macho values, and just because you stick a woman in arguably the lead role of the movie doesn't change the fact that that's the case. I do and don't agree with that. It's part of feminism that doesn't actually make sense to me, because you're saying that there's a value set which is distinctly masculine, but the underlying core of your philosophy is supposed to, on one level, be equality. So I don't see how a movie which might still, and I would say the movie does not in fact extol masculine, be perceived in the Greco-Roman sense of the word masculine, virtues. But even if it did, and then places a woman in that category, it still seems as though it is still affirming that, look, see, because women do not societally have to act and extol Greco-Roman feminine virtues, that someone can defy a norm and fall into another category, which you'd think is the essence of equality on one level, that I can't judge you for falling into either specific category. Regardless of your physical gender. But again, like I said, so basically I reject that premise and that theory. And I'll leave it at that, otherwise people will scream at me. But I'll probably make another video more about that later. But that's my thoughts on the movie. I loved it. Obviously there are things to be critical about the movie of. It's rated R for a reason. And if that's going to bother you, don't go see the movie. If you are a person who, like my beloved wife, Sarah, who gets dizzy easily, there's tons that happens in this movie. If you're the kind of person who just me doing this kind of starts to wig you out, don't go watch that movie. You're gonna vomit halfway through it. There are parts of the movie that, from a pure plot point, don't necessarily make sense as to why people do certain things. I answer that with my theory that, well, it happens within Max's psyche. But if you're a person who needs every dot and every dash all there, you're not going to get that. But I still think the movie will not leave you disappointed for lack of information, I don't think. Max, of course, has a unrealistic tendency to shrug off damage. I think you probably know that. Oh, and that was one thing. Okay. On the note of, you have, of course, on the other side of the spectrum, all these butch guys talking about, oh, this movie just emasculated Max, and blah, 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 blah. I don't agree with that either. One thing that did disappoint me, though, I think you see enough of Max. I don't think that there's, like I said, I'm not one of those people who says, oh, he's not in the movie enough, etc., etc. There's one scene, that scene where, again, I'm assuming people have seen the movie at this point, where the bullet farmer's chasing him down, and an awesome scene. He's been blinded from the flare, and he's shooting off his guns, and they're coming, and they get their truck pulled out of the mud, and Max is like, I'm going. Don't wait for me if I'm not back by, if this X, Y, and Z happens. And I was like, sitting there in theater, like, oh my gosh, here it is. We built to this point where Max is just gonna do his thing. And you've had so much action to this point. Blood, explosions, violence, it's been going, it's a 10 already, and you're like, oh man, this thing's about to kick it up. And it happens all off screen. And I get why it happened, and it was kind of humorous, but it's like you had this whole thing, it set up like one joke line where, he comes back in, he's with the blood, and the woman's like, that's not his blood. And okay, that was great, and that was a very badass moment for him to come in and be like that, but I was like, yeah, but when I go to see a Mad Max movie, I do kind of expect to see Max kill at least one guy. Maybe, So that was one place where I was like, oh, come on, really, guys? But all that said, that could be a criticism you could have of the movie, that you actually don't see Max on one level do a whole lot. But again, Max drives. That's primarily what he does. That's what he does in all the other shows. Max isn't Rambo. It's not an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where he's going to take down everybody himself. So if you're expecting that from a movie, you shouldn't. But people loved it. I think, I was talking about it with James. I said, I think it blew people away. They just thought it was going to be an action movie, and a lot of these people had never seen maybe the original Mad Max movies, and they don't realize that there is so much social commentary and so much, pointed messages in the Mad Max series. And if you didn't know that, you just knew Mad Max is about some Mel Gibson being crazy and 2 enter and 1 goes out kind of thing, then you wouldn't have known that. And I think that's why a lot of people were maybe surprised by it pleasantly, and it definitely delivered on that level. So, there it is. That's a quick review of the summer. I got another one coming up. I hope to be joined by some other people in my next one, so be on the lookout for that. We'll be discussing all sorts of cool stuff. Catch you guys later.